There are some people among us who believe they should be able to do wicked things to you and your family and just simply get away with it. And even though their actions have led to harm, from massive costs, massive crime, or 100% avoidable death, these shrubs think their betrayal should go unnoticed and unpunished. But they won't escape notice here. Nobody should be above a deserved reckoning. That's my simple push for justice in today's preamble. Let's start off on the national level. President Trump, for some unknown reason, sat down with unfair left-wing never-Trumpers at NBC Fake News. We'll cover this in greater detail later in the show, but the entire interview was a biased interviewer ignoring everything the Democrats have done to us these last 16 years. The lawlessness, the death from the open borders, throwing their political opponents in jail, robbing Americans of their vote, the promotion of criminals, and the usurpation of law-abiding Americans' rights. And instead, Kristen Welker wanted to make sure that Trump wouldn't treat Democrats the same way they've treated him and our people.
What do you want to say to Americans who didn't support you in this campaign?
I'm going to treat you every bit as well as I have treated the greatest MAGA supporters. There's never been anything like MAGA in the history of this country. These people are so dedicated to making America great again. It's very simple. And I'm going to treat them just the same as I treat MAGA. We're going to treat everybody good. We want success for our country. We want safety for our country. You know, our country's under threat, as you know.
It is. Left-wing Democrats never appear on conservative media, even though they were invited. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, no Democrat in power, wants to have a conversation, for example, with your liberty-loving Latino or any other conservative in media. At the same time, it's somehow expected that America First people must show up on these unfair, specious, biased, and leftist media outlets to answer their inane questions. I'm tired of accepting the double standards and wish America First leaders would fight fire with fire. After they've covered for Democrats and all the harm they've been doing, the left-wing press should pay a steep price. Americans should tune them out. And America First lawmakers should refuse to appear on their hopelessly anti-American outlets. Meanwhile, in my home state of Texas, a vote to replace a fake Republican, Dade Phelan, as Speaker of the Texas House, was underway this weekend. President Trump properly identified Phelan as an America Last Republican, as Phelan kept up a coup started by a man named Joe Strauss back in 2009. Even though the GOP has had the House majority since that time through backstabbing fake Republicans, the Democrats have been in charge of the GOP-led Texas House for the last 15 years. But that all changed over the weekend. Republican David Cook was nominated to be the next Speaker by a majority of Texas Republicans. But leftists, disguised as Republicans, wanted to keep the Democrats in charge of the House, so 26 of these America Last Republicans, they walked out and sold out their voters to do deals with Democrat socialists, the very same party responsible for all of our nation's misery for 12 of the last 16 years. The names of these Republicans who stabbed their own voters in the back are on the screen. In total, 29 fake Republicans will join 47 Democrats in supporting a fake Republican by the name of Dustin Burrows. He's every bit as bad as Dade Phelan was, perhaps even worse. And get this, the Republican Speaker will have been overwhelmingly elected by Democrats, in essence, making him the Democrats' Speaker, thwarting the will of the Texas majority. Now, here's the good news. In Texas, the bylaws of the Republican caucus stipulate that Republican members, must support the caucus nominee on the floor of the House. That nominee is David Cook, who won with 54 votes. More good news. The Texas State Republican Executive Committee voted to pass a resolution stating it would censure any Republican member who does not support David Cook for Speaker. And that means, according to new party rules, that any censured Republican member could be removed from the primary ballot for 2 years, meaning those fake Republicans will be forced to run as who and what they are: leftist, anti-American Democrats. In Texas, those who break faith with the GOP voters will lose their jobs, just as they did in the last historic primary this last year. well-deserved reckoning for those who would betray their voters in service to socialists. Then there's the Pope. As a devout Catholic, I have to start off by apologizing to all of Christendom for the disgraceful and godless conduct of Pope Francis. I can assure you most Catholics are embarrassed by this man. Over the weekend, in a ceremony held at the Vatican, Pope Francis presented the annual nativity scene, which featured baby Jesus donned in a Palestinian keffiyeh. His actions, as is the case with most of what this Pope does, created quite a stir. And let me be plain. I have no beef with the Pope and his apparent animosity toward Israel and how they are conducting their war against Hamas and Hezbollah. But the Pope using the nativity scene, a scene that should be exclusively focused on Jesus Christ and his birth, as a mechanism to make a political statement, well, that's grotesque. It's inappropriate. It's blasphemous and deserving of universal contempt. His actions were 100% inappropriate. But leftists who have infiltrated the church are making this kind of garbage a regular habit. A leftist activist pretending to be a Catholic priest used the holy sacrifice of the Mass to promote his political views on gays. Again, let me be plain. I have no issue with Brian Massengale supporting the gay lifestyle. The issue comes when he used the holy sacrifice of the Mass that we Catholics believe is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ to promote his political views. Like the display put on by Pope Francis, the sacrilege should be condemned as the blasphemous act that it is, an act that takes focus from where it belongs, exclusively on Jesus Christ, the reason for the Christmas season. The silence on this from Cardinal Dolan and the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops is deafening, in particular when one considers that Pope Francis has punished, marginalized, and even defrocked real holy men like Father Frank Pavone, Bishop Strickland, and Archbishop Salvatore Corleone. In his book Infiltration, Taylor Marshall outlines what he believes is responsible for this blasphemy, sacrilege, and anti-Christ displays the world is horrified to see from some who claim to be a part of the Catholic Church. A communist infiltration that began decades ago. And the reckoning for these infiltrators will not be for you and me to dispense. Their earned reckoning will be served up by the Almighty himself. Americans, real Americans, stand for justice. We seek it. We desire it. It's in our DNA. And you know what? That's a good thing. Because when we, the people, seek justice for the wrongs done to our families, our communities, our state, and our country, we live up to the vision of our founding fathers. As John Adams observed about this breed you and I call Americans, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other, end quote. He was right. So you keep on pressing for justice. You keep on pushing for consequences for those who have done you wrong. You keep insisting on a reckoning. And by God, it will come. You know, folks, I thank God for my wonderful wife, my kids, my country, the greatest nation ever. And Americans like you who believe in the truth, the Chris Salcedo Show will never stop fighting for you.
The Chris Salcedo Show, for the news you need to know.